Al Jazeera Podcasts.
Hi, Malika here. In 2017, U.S. forces dropped a 10,000-kilogram bomb on a remote village in eastern Afghanistan, saying the target was ISIL fighters. The strike made headlines around the world and then quickly faded from view. But for the people who lived there, the impact never did. Today, we're revisiting an episode from the archives that takes us to that village. Almost 9 years later, its residents are still living with lingering health problems, destroyed farmland, and unanswered questions. It's an intimate look at what modern warfare leaves behind, long after the world has moved on. The episode originally aired July 14th, 2025. All dates and references are from that time.
Today, tracing the scars of the mother of all bombs.
You go to these places where wells have dried up, where people's homes and their lives and their memories and their children have been destroyed, and they're still waiting for somebody to be held accountable.
Al Jazeera traveled to the remote Afghan village of Spingar to see what still lingers. I'm Natasha del Toro, and this is The Take.
My name is Osama bin Javaid. I'm a correspondent for Al Jazeera English. I'm coming to you from Doha.
As always, happy to have you on The Take. Really interested in your recent reporting in Afghanistan. Some of the images that you brought back were absolutely stunning. You recently got rare access to Spingar, which is a village in eastern Afghanistan, where the U.S. dropped the so-called mother of all bombs back in April 2017.
The United States dropped a massive GBU-43 bomb, also known as the mother of all bombs, in eastern Afghanistan.
According to the Pentagon, it was used on a series of caves used by Islamic State. It's the first time this type of bomb had been used in combat.
Now, I know that this is a very remote village, and I actually saw the images of you trying to get there, and I would love for you to kind of recreate that journey for me. How did you get there, and what did you see when you arrived?
Well, since 2017, when the United States dropped the mother of all bombs, a bomb which is 30 feet long, it carries a payload of about 10,000 kilograms. And all we saw was grainy footage of it going down and obliterating something. And since that time, I really wanted to go and see what that bomb did to the people who were there, to the village that was there. And fortunately, we got the chance to actually travel there. It's a few hours drive with a lot of off-roading. And there's only one dirt road which leads to the village. And to my surprise, when we got closer to the village, our guide asked us to disembarked from the car and said, well, the car will only take you up till here. And from there, we traveled on foot. We had to go down a ravine, cross fields, jump over a river, which fortunately wasn't raging at that point. And then we finally found ourselves in that serene, picturesque village on the side of a mountain with mud homes, children playing, and that beautiful natural sound of just nature and beauty. Which for a moment takes you away from the devastation which actually brought us to that place.
Yeah, I mean, again, the images that you brought back are absolutely incredible. I mean, the sky, it looks so vast, and to see you walking across, you were like jumping from stone to stone across the water. I don't know if that's your usual when you take on these assignments, but it was actually just incredible to see you getting there.
Usually, we don't plan to go jumping from rock to rock, but as assignments take us. We sometimes sleep in our cars. We've covering in other parts of the world, conflict zones. We get stranded for hours. We've sometimes on military bases for days. And that is just part and parcel of the job.
And you said you were driving a few hours from where? From Kabul?
Yes, so it's about a 3-hour drive from Kabul to Jalalabad. Then from Jalalabad, it's another 2.5 hours. So it's a long journey. And it just goes to show you how remote that village is. It really is difficult for you to get there. So you really have to be determined to go there in order for you to be able to make it.
Right. Yes. I mean, and this was really rare access that you were able to get. I mean, it's very few people that had the opportunity to go there. And it, just this contrast that you're painting, though, between the mother of all bombs that's being dropped on this village and then this serene place when you arrive. Describe for me also the people that were there.
Let me take you back to the journey. So once you cross into Spingar district, then you have to go to the security points and the governorate office that has been set up by the now Taliban government. This is a very difficult and remote area, also because of not just its geography, but also because of the groups which have been operating in that area. So this was the heartland for ISIL fighters in Afghanistan. This is also where hardline groups like the Tehrik-e-Taliban Pakistan are also found. So we had to make sure that the security allowed for us to be in that area. So we got to Spingar, and then now it's been divided into two different areas: Achin, which is in Nangarhar, and Spingar, which is a different district. And then the river divides these two. So we had to go through two different sets of security pleasantries, sipping tea with the Taliban fighters there. And then we were allowed to go forward, and they gave us a guard. And I asked them whether this was for our security, but he told us that because it is such a peculiar area, unless you have somebody from the village with you, you won't be able to make it, because there's so many ways that you can get there, and it is very easy to get lost or injure yourself coming down the ravine and crossing the river. As we got to the village, it's like every other village in Afghanistan. The children, out of curiosity, they see somebody from the outside, they all gather around you. The girls who are a little older start covering their faces as soon as you turn around and you look at them or you try to film them. You can see women in the backdrop, but they very rarely come and interact with you. And it was a very welcoming feeling, because the people, they thought everybody in the world has forgotten about them. And they were very thankful that we were there to tell the world about their story.
Yeah, I'm sure they don't have very many people, many foreigners or visitors that come all the way there. Osama, for those who may not remember, maybe can you walk us through what happened April 13th, 2017?
In 2017, there was a press release that was issued by the then U.S. military that was in charge of that area, and then certified by the then Afghan government, that there was a presence of ISIL fighters in Achin, in Spingar, where the United States used the mother of all bombs. And it just stopped at that. A U.S. military video, which was shot from an aircraft probably on high altitude, was released, and that was it. It was stated that dozens of ISIL fighters and their subterranean networks were destroyed in that attack.
We have incredible leaders in the military, and we have incredible military, and we are very proud of them. And this was another very, very successful mission.
And this was very interesting, because very few people have had access to that area. And as I started investigating that story, the accounts from the people on the ground were very different. They felt that this was a place which was used as a weapons testing facility rather than trying to fight ISIL fighters. According to the people there, many of those fighters who were reportedly killed in the strike had already been killed. And before this bomb was dropped, all of the people from surrounding villages were also evacuated.
I know this is a non-nuclear weapon. Maybe talk to me about the kind of destruction that a bomb like this can actually make.
But you have to figure out how many feet tall are you? And then imagine that bomb standing beside you, because it's 30 feet long. It cannot fit in a conventional bomber. So the United States military uses those big airplanes which carry tanks and boats. Those are the ones that are used to drop it from the sky and then direct it from a satellite. It is the most lethal non-nuclear bomb that the US has, because it carries a payload of about 10,000 kilograms. If you remember, in the Afghan conflict, the United States quite frequently used daisy cutters, the bombs that weighed about 7,000 kilograms, which initially started service as bombs that would just clear the field for the US helicopters to land in Vietnam. And this bomb weighed 3,000 kilograms more than those daisy cutters. So And it is quite different from those as well, because it does not detonate on impact. It actually detonates above ground on its intended target and obliterates everything in its path. About 300 meters is the kill radius where everything would be destroyed. And in about a kilometer radius, it could deafen people.
Wow. And you were saying that this 10,000 kilogram bomb kills anyone within 300 meters, and that the shock wave can deafen people within a kilometer radius. I mean, this is like a massive, massive explosion that's being dropped on this little village in this remote part of Afghanistan. How did people there even survive this bomb?
So that was the interesting part, that the casualty count for civilians was 0. And that is very peculiar, because you would imagine that if this is a bomb that is being dropped, which is so devastating in its nature and carries such a huge payload, would have a real impact on the people. But the people there told us that a lot of people had migrated because of ISIL fighters' presence in that area. And just hours before this bomb was dropped, there's a village where we parked our car and crossed the river. They said that village was also evacuated, and when they came back, that village was also gone, because it's just over 300 meters. They were all surprised, because they said because the US aircraft had been dropping bombs quite frequently in that area. One farmer told us that it was although they had gone quite far from this place, but the sound that they heard was something that they had never heard before. He told us that some of his relatives saw the flash from 2 provinces away. Is how intense that fireball was.
And what kinds of stories did they share with you about how their lives changed after this explosion?
So the people of Afghanistan are impoverished. They have very little to look forward to. All they own are the pieces of land that they have, the livestock that they carry, or the fields that they cultivate. And for them, this was their lives and their livelihood. Because it is so poor, not everyone can afford to rebuild their homes. They told us stories about mud homes, which, according to one man, it was dearer to him than a bungalow that would ever be built in its place. It had all his childhood memories.
It was a great injustice to our people. They destroyed our homes made of mud, which were more valuable to us than bungalows. So many houses were destroyed here. The new ones are built by people, often by selling their livestock or women's jewellery. Personally, I cannot afford to even build a single room.
The one thing that everybody kept talking about was the health issues. The local imam came to us and said, look at our children, look at what's happening to their faces. These are not the same children as we used to have before the bomb was dropped. We met a few children who had ulcers on their mouths, people whose skin was breaking out. And because there is no real data to compare it pre-2017 to now, we don't really know what is actually causing those diseases. But the villagers are adamant that this was not the case before.
The blast caused many skin diseases, mental health issues, and respiratory illnesses. All of these problems are a direct result of the explosion.
And then there is, because it's a small farming community, they are quite sure that the yields that they would get from their wheat and the orchards that they had, well, they're all destroyed now. So not a lot of fruit trees are growing there, apart from some wild trees that I saw there. They have a major impact on their livelihood, because they claim, because of the bomb, the earth is not giving them as much yield as they used to get. They feel that now they have to work twice as hard, cultivate more area, use more crops more frequently, try and get the same yield as before to be able to have enough food and ration on the table for the extreme winter months, and also make some money so they can continue to live their lives.
More with Osama after the break. So, Osama, with people, as you're saying, they're facing these health issues, they have ruined farmland. I mean, has anyone, whether it's the Afghan government, NGOs, or the international community, done anything to look into the impact or offer any help?
Well, the short answer is no. The people we met in the village say they tried to raise their voices. but the then government muffled them. They were not allowed to move to other parts of the country or meet people or discuss what their problems were. And they said that there was nobody who was interested to ask them about what their lives were, what they needed. They are not angry, but they said the same thing about the now government as well. They say they understand they don't have the money, the Taliban government that is in charge, but they're also not providing them any relief. Although the security in that area has improved, there's no more ISIL fighters, the conflict is gone, and they can securely and safely live their lives, but their lives are still very, very primitive.
Mm-hmm. On top of that, I know that there are restrictions that are put on women and girls, in terms of education. So that seems like that's just going to exacerbate this cycle of poverty.
Absolutely. The kind of restrictions that the Taliban government has put on women and girls, on their schools, on their universities, on parts of society that they can interact with, on businesses that they can do, it is creating an impact in urban centers. In rural Afghanistan, which is 75% of the country, the women and girls are traditionally, they live indoors, they help out in the fields, they don't interact that much. So that aspect in rural Afghanistan has remained the same, but it's a real problem for people in urban Afghanistan.
Mm-hmm. Osama, what happened in Spingar reminds us of the kinds of bombs that Israel has dropped on Gaza and Lebanon. Israel's dropped more than 100,000 tons of bombs on Gaza, according to Al-Quds newspaper. That's the equivalent to nearly 7 nuclear bombs dropped on Hiroshima. Do you see parallels in the environmental and health consequences from the use of such heavy and destructive weapons?
I think Gaza would be the exception here because Gaza is where the so-called rules-based order has come to die. There is nothing that compares to what is going on in Gaza on the ferocity of the attacks and on the scale of this devastation that is being meted out to the people for a year and a half. But I've been covering wars and conflict for nearly 20 years now. And I can tell you there are parallels that I've seen in Syria, in Iraq, in Afghanistan, in Pakistan, in other parts of the world where the trail of destruction remains long after the invaders or the bombers are gone. In Iraq, there's a study that we were looking into on how depleted uranium was used, and it's still causing birth defects in many parts of the country. Unfortunately, that data set, that expertise does not exist in Afghanistan. So it will be some time before those kind of studies are done on the people on the ground. There is a true viciousness to the nature of how bombs are dropped and how wars are conducted, with complete disregard for the people and the lives that it has an impact on. And not just in the immediate, but also in years to come. Because you go to these places where wells have dried up, where ancestral farmlands have been taken away, where people's homes and their lives and their memories and their children have been destroyed. And they're still waiting for somebody to be held accountable. They're still waiting for somebody to come and help. And I think in the last 20 years of this war, which was so ferocious in its nature, where the US government and the allies spent about $300 billion a day, every day for 20 years.
$300 million? Is that what you just said?
That is an estimate that $300 million a day, every day for 20 years were spent on Afghanistan during that war. And I think it's not just a moral, but I feel that it's a legal responsibility for the international community, for the outside world as well, to come back and revisit these areas and atone for some of what they caused in those parts.
And they're not, is what you're saying. And at least in Spingar, you're not seeing much help at all. So on top of everything that the villagers in Spingar are dealing with from the blast, something that very, very much struck me from the reporting that you've done are the images of the children and, the hunger and the malnutrition that people there are facing. I know you've just been to Kunar in northeastern Afghanistan to report on all of that. Maybe you could tell us, what did you see?
Well, remote parts of Afghanistan were off limits to the outside world because much of this was under the Taliban control and the Afghan government never had access to it. There was a lot of fighting in those parts, and the international community, apart from dropping bombs, never actually made it to those areas. I traveled to Nangarhar, I traveled to Kunar. These remote areas were the bastions of a lot of fighters which came from these parts, and there wasn't a lot of help. And it is more or less the same now as well, where in one basic health unit in Kunar, 26,000 people of that area rely on it. There are children in their millions in Afghanistan who are either stunted or facing acute malnutrition. In Kunar, when we went to the hospital, it was a really difficult sight to see because the whole ward was crowded. There were multiple parents who'd come from really long distances with children who, some of them were not going to make it. These children were skin and bones. These children were visibly just a shell of themselves. There was one child that we featured in our report that I kept asking my cameraman to hold until that child cries, but the child was too weak because of malnutrition. It couldn't cry. So we would see it crying, but you wouldn't hear it. And that is it's a punch to the gut of when you see those children suffering, and you see that this is an easily fixable solution to all of this with a little bit of money and aid and help, yet they're not able to get it, and they're left to fend for themselves. And many of these children, if they survive, will not be able to grow up as full, healthy adults.
Mm-hmm. And I understand Afghanistan is facing a severe humanitarian crisis with over 22.9 million people who are in urgent need of aid. So it's just really important for people to understand that this is a country that's in crisis. Now, I know that you've been reporting from Afghanistan for many years now. How has the world's attention shifted, and what do you think we're missing when it comes to understanding the full impact of these stories?
I think the people of Afghanistan would tell you that they feel abandoned. They felt abandoned when the world fought in Afghanistan for 20 years and handed back the government of Afghanistan to the Taliban that it had been fighting. They feel abandoned because all of the promises that Western governments made to the people who were working with them in the fight against Afghanistan were not actually true. There's a lot of people who are still waiting for visas. People in Afghanistan will tell you that the world has abandoned them because all of the money that was supposed to be for Afghanistan, the Afghanistan Central Bank reserves, they're still being frozen. They will tell you that the world has abandoned Afghanistan because all of the aid that was coming in for decades abruptly stopped. So this is a country which was on the front lines of the so-called war on terror, where multiple presidents of multiple Western countries would tell you that this is a fight that they believe in. This is the people that they want to change and bring prosperity to, and have failed in all of those promises. So that is why people of Afghanistan are, especially the people who are not part of the fighting machine, the people who are not part of either the government that was there previously or part of the Taliban, which is the majority of the country, would tell you that not just NGOs and governments, but journalists have abandoned Afghanistan as well. There is no focus on Afghanistan. And unless there are people telling the stories of the people of Afghanistan, there is going to be much that changes. And that is not helped by the government that is in charge of Afghanistan as well, because it has put a lot of restrictions on not just journalists who are Afghans, but journalists who are coming from outside as well. So it will take real perseverance and push for the world to see the people of Afghanistan as a people that we are, not see them as us and them, but see them as people who have lives, who have ambitions, who have stories, and who deserve the attention that the rest of the world does.
And that's The Take. If you want to catch more episodes like this, make sure you're following our YouTube playlist. That's where you're going to find all of our recent content updated regularly so you never miss an episode. And while you're at it, hit that subscribe button so you stay in the loop with all things Al Jazeera English. See you tomorrow.